Hello,
Well, hi,
Ray.
Lynn. Very good presentation. We've got a great international audience today.
Yeah. So let's start with the top of our question list. This is the first question. I use rack ovens when running oven balancing profiles. What is a common achievable variance from top, middle, and bottom in the baking chamber of the oven? And I think Ray is going to answer that, because he's got so much experience. He's like performed probably thousands and thousands and thousands of rack oven thermal profile.
Do you see my screen at this time?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So the question before us right now again, please.
Rack ovens. What is a common variance from top to bottom? Top, middle, bottom. You know how rack ovens, have this discrepancy between the top rack having too much baking and the bottom rack not having enough, and the middle is just like doesn't get
Sure.
air.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for.
What's the variance? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, oven models vary considerably, and the situation is often encountered in bakeries with multiple rotational rack ovens. They're never bought at the same time. They all have their own unique, personalities.
Yes.
And dealing with 10-degree delta, certainly no more than 10 degrees. You'd prefer 5 degrees or better between top, mid-level, and bottom racks. The way to work through that is to utilize the 6 thermocouples that come with your mold, 3 pairs of ambient and dough channels, top, mid-level, and bottom level racks there. And that will help you rein that in and decide what is it about the air circulation, the exhaust, the burners themselves to cause that. And it's often great data to provide to your oven maintenance personnel, whether they're in-house or hired from the place you bought your ovens at, to have such data. So I say you could live with up to 10 degrees top to bottom, but 5, whether you're talking Fahrenheit or Celsius, would be more appropriate.
So if you were to like buy a brand spanking oven, you're saying that the top to the bottom is going to have a 10-degree difference?
Well, a brand new one, once it's installed, commissioned, and you're free to operate it, are going to be in the 5-degree or better realm.
5-degree or better, Ronnie. That's what you should be targeting. And you have to try to balance your ovens. Get the data to your engineering team and tell them, it's more than 5 degrees. I mean, we all run with old ovens sometimes. That's what we're given. But balancing that oven is so key to getting a proper a smaller variance between the top and the bottom. Okay, Ron.
And it's important to remove variables when testing. In other words, make sure you're baking the same product, or at least have a similar set points on the oven when you're comparing oven to oven.
That's true. That's true. So Ronnie's continued question is, I have a 3-step in my process before going into the oven. So far, I have not been able to hit the yeast kill milestone and have begun to think I won't be able to hit 50 to 55 due to me. Yeah, that's correct, Ronnie. If you're entering the oven at probably, what is it, freezing temperatures, probably like maybe 40 to 50, you're not going to get 50% to 55%. This is an instance where your product needs, the profile needs to be catered properly to your product. So what is a recommendation? I have no recommendation. You just have to run a bunch of tests to determine which product will give you a gold standard. You know, it could be 60, it could be 70%, but you have to decide where that is. So yeah, I agree with you. There is no 50 to 55% when you put in frozen dough. Okay, in making buns, if we're targeting light and airy crumb structure, how long should my bake out and time zone be? Light and airy texture is to me, it sounds like quite a bit of bake out. So please follow the guidelines for hamburger buns that I placed on the slides just now. And those slides will be available to you in probably next week once we process everything and store it in our library. Okay. How do you use the hinge test for flatbreads? I don't know. Ray, have you done any kind of test on flatbreads yet?
Well, we have plenty of customers that run a pita and other such flatbreads, along with you know, pizza crust, as far as that's concerned. Yeah, good question. Don't have experience.
Yeah. So you do use the hinge test for flatbreads. Sometimes, depends on how big your flatbreads is, but the better texture test would be the rollability test. Okay, so you just roll your flatbread up, and that will indicate to you whether you have too much of a bake or not. It is so easy to overbake flatbreads. You have no clue how easy it is, you know, because it's really high temperature, right? So you're driving out all the moisture, and the thermal profile would be perfect. Because flatbreads are so thin in the dough, and I have experience with this before, all you gotta do is you fold one on top of the other and put the thermal profile in. Okay, so this is my thermal profile here, right? Okay, so I don't have a piece of paper. Okay, so this is your flatbread, right? Okay, flatbread going into the oven. Put the thermal profile in here. Put the thermal profile. I can't. Okay, just put the thermal profile in here, and then fold your flatbread over, and then make this go through the oven. All right. I hope that helps. But that's how you do thermal profiling on flatbreads, and you should do a rollability test. Hope that helps. Okay, so Ronnie has another question. When we increase our bake out, we have prematurely dry bread. What is the best way to address this? So my question to Ronnie, if you could type it in the chat box. Okay, Ronnie, how much do you bake out the buns? Are you targeting 20%? Are you targeting more than that? Do you have any idea? What is your bake out percentage? If you could type that down, that would be great. Then I can really help you understand what else to do if you're hitting 20%. Okay, so if you could type that out, that'd be great. Okay, so you're having a good bake out. Okay, I wouldn't go above or below 80. Okay, no more. So in this scenario, then you really need to look at your enzymes. You need to put in an enzyme, and because you pretty much maxed out your bake out, you don't want to go to 75%. Okay, light and airy crumb. You also need to understand what are you putting in there in terms of a dough improver. Okay. Because if you don't have proper gluten development, you don't have proper conditioners to help with your machining, you are going to lose the air, you're going to lose the volume, and with that comes a very dense and very heavy kind of crumb. Okay, so in this aspect, you know, more needs to be done. So maybe we could work to create a project around that and help you through your airy crumb problems. Okay, there is one more question on our question list. Samir says, I would like to ask why the cake rises from the middle more than the other points. So I have been trying to ask ECD to create some kind of cake probe for me to understand this. It's coming, but I really believe that why the middle rises slower is because the heat transfer from the edges are faster than the middle, right? So the heat transfer from the pan to the side of the cake is faster. The heat transfer from the side of the pan to the cake is conduction. The heat transfer from the top of the oven to the middle of the cake is convection, right? So convectional heat transfer are slower. That's why the middle of the cake rises slowly, right? So it's got everything to do with the heat transfer. And sometimes, you know, if you want to stop that point from getting too tall, you have to minimize the mass of your batter in the pan. The mass to the size dimension has to go down, okay? So you won't get such a high rise. And I would love to run cake studies to understand that a little bit more, because that's a huge oven issue. That's a oven efficiency issues too. You get a lot of these high middle crown cakes when your ovens have a problem, okay? So that's a great one. Okay, let me go to our question queue with Joanna. We also have a question queue. Joanna, do you have that with you?
I do, yeah. So a few more questions for you guys. So the first one is, what's the best way to measure internal dough temperature while thermal profiling?
Okay, I can take that one.
Yep.
The idea here is you want consistent results. You want to be able to rely upon the data that you collect. The breadometer does this in a great way because first of all, for larger dough pieces, you would insert vertically. You could go horizontally into buns, for instance. But the probe is going to rise with the oven spring because we have this stop plate right here. So that consistently locates up to 5 thermocouples at repeatable depths. No matter which employee you have in your plant doing the work for you. So this is very important, and it's a lot easier and more reliable to utilize than individual thermocouples, which, you know, will they be in the geometric center of the dough piece when inserted manually? Hard to say. There's a lot of variability there. So that makes a big difference in reliability, being able to be being pressed into the dough. The second thing is that the software, the breadometer environment, that's part of the software that comes with the kit, automatically calculates these percentage of bake time S-curve parameter data. So it's very easy to extract bake out as, you know, 100, minus 83% right here, for instance. So that would be a 17% bake, 17% bake out. That's a good example here. So as we know, bread bakes from the outside in. So here are the 5 insertion channels as depicted here in the graphic. And the process origin and process end are initially configured using the by creating an oven model. And for those with rack ovens, we certainly recommend implementing the step profiles that your oven chances are is capable of with different temperature regimes. And say you might have 2, perhaps 3 zones, even though it's one oven and it's rotating. Use those utilize this, in other words, to program your temperature regimes. So you have a bake time in minutes, the number of zones, enter the set points in the oven, bottoms if you have them, and save that, so that becomes part of your documentation moving forward. And you have this automatic data right here.
That's great. Very cool. A second question we had was, how does the software measure bake time between the oven entrance and then exit?
I talked about that briefly a moment ago there. Let's take a look. Here's a sourdough profile.
Hey, Ray, we're having a little of a hard time listening to you. It sounds like a jet airplane that's going above you. Maybe you can get yourself closer to the microphone.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's very quiet.
Oh, there you go.
It's very quiet in the room here, so yeah, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Yes, so here's an example of, well, let's go back to where we were. Yes. Well, how does it measure time? Well, first of all, the mole is running along, and it's the job of the topmost thermocouple, whether or not it's a traditional thermocouple or channel 1 in a breadometer. The initial spike sets the process origin, and the diminishment of air temperature, which is going to change much more quicker than the Dopeys, will show the process end, and will typically can be checked against the oven model that was created there. So you always want to use minutes, time in minutes, and in this case, the model will assume that zones are of equal length when you do have more than one zone depicted. And with that saved, we want to make sure we remain in minutes for our calculation. And that ensures that the percentages of bake time are indeed accurate for the data that you're going to use to either, as Lin described, to drag the process origin to you're shortening the bake time, so you're increasing the milestones here, the S-curve milestones, which, by the way, are programmable values here in these columns. So Lin has been talking about, for instance, 132 degrees. If you wanted to put 132 degrees in here, you could simply edit that and put in that value. So you're, you know, it's yours to utilize to all the features here. And so on and so forth. So here, by adjusting the process origin there, there's another feature in the software, perhaps seldom used in baking, but you know, there's talk about adjusting increments of percentage points by 3. Well, say you want to get more browning, more color out of your bread, while maintaining texture and moisture content for that long shelf life. Well, you'd want to boost the temperature of the final zone. So one way to do that is to bump it up 10 degrees by repeated profiles, or utilize prediction and bump this value up a little bit And
Ray, excuse me, real quick, sorry. We actually can't see the profile right now. It looks like we're looking at the your web browser. So maybe you could, yeah, sorry about that. Just switch over to your
okay.
the program.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So okay, sorry about that. So we have the profile here. I've been dragging the process origin line.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I've been looking up at the oven model here, and actually it's setting multiple zones, even in a rack oven, when you're taking advantage of the step profile features. And then talking also about the fact that yeast skilled gelatinization temperatures and arrival, I'm in Fahrenheit preferences right now, are programmable as well. Right click to edit content, and you can change that back to 140 if you want, for total yeast kill, I suppose, as opposed to when it starts.
Oh, okay.
But that's up to you. So these are programmable. When you're in the bake-S curve, this row is what is programmable.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our five repeatable dough depths, and this is a good example of a profile. The time you would initially set based on what your factory is doing to the for that appropriate variety, and otherwise the process end and origin will be set for accuracy in the mileposts for the S-curve parameters. Okay.
Got it. Thank you. All right, Joanna. Are there any more questions?
So we got two more, and then yeah, if our participants have any more, feel free to keep typing those in. But the next one we have is, what causes a sloped crown, and can I use a thermal profile for that?
So a sloped crown is caused by, if this is a bun, is caused by uneven rising. Okay, one side of the bun rises up and the other side doesn't rise as well. So you can see that's a sloped crown right there. Okay, so the bun rises because of oven spring. Okay, so if you control your oven spring at 50%, you should not get so much of a slope crown. And also, if you have to still get a slope crown, then it's something that you have to look at the sheeting and panning side of things, that you're not hurting your buns by making it hit the rim of the pan. That's one way of looking at it. But basically, we've done many tests where we reduced that yeast kill to 45% of the time, and we completely eliminated slope crowns. So that's one way to do it.
Great. All right. And then another one. So if I target the right arrival at 80% and I'm still getting gummy slices at the packaging station, what should I do?
So I would say just bake it longer. Just bake it longer at a lower temperature, but basically still target 80%. Okay. I think, again, this is where the area under the graph should be able to help you. It's that gumminess issue. Okay. So the thing is just to really dry it all out, but no, don't dry it all the way. I don't know if that makes sense, but lower temperature, longer bake time is going to help your gumminess. Okay. Is that all we have for today?
That is it.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. And we just recently launched at Baker Academy. So another last plug for us. Please join us because we will have a lot of live streams. We'll have a lot of papers coming out and also more of this kind of format where we take about an hour, hour and a half of your time to really train and educate you and your coworkers. Okay. I would like to thank ECD and Ray for coming on today. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you, audience. I recognize many of your names.
Great, great. And if you need more information, reach out to Ray. And actually, I would like to see if Ray and Wayne can work together to get cake data for us to talk about. Right? All right, everyone. Thank you for coming. See you soon.
Thanks. Bye all.
Bye.